The Final Draft by Winston Coco, Chapter 1. The rain fell like forgotten memories, each drop a reminder of what I had tried to escape. I woke up, heart racing, tangled in my own words, lost within the labyrinth of a story I had yet to finish. The room around me felt wrong, a twisted reproduction of my literary ambitions. The walls pulsed with a heartbeat, ink-stained shadows creeping along the edges like tendrils of an unfinished idea. I was Nathaniel Cross, a celebrated crime novelist, or at least I had been. The accolades echoed in my mind, a faint whisper amidst the chaos. Now I found myself ensnared in the crimson reflection, staring into the abyss of a narrative gone rogue. I glanced around the room, my fingers scratching against the surface of the typewriter, its keys slick with the residue of untyped thoughts. The air was thick with a dampness that felt alive, crackling with the tension of what lay beyond the door. Outside, the rain drummed a frantic rhythm against the roof, synchronized with my pulse. It was both a comfort and a threat, a reminder that I was the architect of this madness. What have I done? The story had taken a dark turn of its own volition. The killer, the Red Mirror, was a manifestation of my guilt and obsession, a character I had conjured from the depths of my mind. Now he was real, lurking just beyond the shadows, waiting for the right moment to strike. I pushed myself up from the desk, the chair creaking in protest. My reflection in the mirror across the room was distorted, shifting like the words on the page. I could feel his gaze on me, a chilling awareness that made the hair on my neck stand upright. The killer knew I existed. He knew I was the only one who could expose him. With each step, the floorboards groaned underfoot, mirroring my reluctance to face what awaited. I reached the door, hesitating, my hand hovering over the knob. I could feel it, the weight of a story that was no longer just mine. The echo of deleted scenes rippled in the air, ghostly fragments of narrative taunting me with their unfinished potential. "Nathaniel!" A voice sliced through the silence. It was a woman, desperate and sharp. I recognized her, though the memories were muddied like watercolors bleeding into one another. "Get out of there! You can't stay!"
You have to move. He knows, Elena. She was the last vestige of hope in a world warped by my creation. I could see her through the door, framed by the dim light of the hallway. Her eyes were wide, reflecting a fear that felt all too familiar. "I know," I replied, my voice barely above a whisper. "But how do I escape my own story?"
I must find a way to rewrite this. Every word I had written had become a shackle, chaining me to the very plot I sought to control. A storm raged outside, mirroring the tempest within me. I could feel the Red Mirror's presence lurking, waiting like a serpent poised to strike. I took a breath, steeling myself against the impending dread. "Elena, I can't just run. The story will follow me." "Then change it. You're the author," she urged. Her words ignited a flicker of defiance in me. Maybe she was right. I was the one wielding the pen. I could reshape this narrative if I could just find the strength. I opened the door, and the storm of rain welcomed me like an old friend. The hallway was dimly lit, shadows clinging to the corners like secrets. I could feel the ambient tension crackle in the air, a prelude to the chaos that awaited. "Where do you think you're going?" A smooth voice taunted from the end of the corridor. The Red Mirror stood there, cloaked in darkness, eyes gleaming with malevolence. I froze, heart pounding against my ribcage, a wild drumbeat that matched the chaos of the storm outside. This isn't how it's supposed to go. "You can't keep hiding, Nathaniel," he said, a wicked smile twisting his lips. "I know all your secrets. I've read every word." My throat tightened, the weight of his words crashing over me like a wave. He was right. I had created him, and in doing so, I had unleashed my own demons. "I'm not afraid of you," I managed, though my voice trembled. "No, but you should be. I'm the one holding the pen now," he hissed, stepping forward. Panic surged within me, primal and raw. The world around us began to shift, the walls warping as if responding to the tension. The familiar confines of reality ebbed away, leaving only the stark intensity of this confrontation. The typewriter in my mind clicked rhythmically, a heartbeat echoing the stakes of our encounter. I could feel the ink surging through my veins, driving me forward. If I could rewrite the scene, I could reclaim my power. "You're just a figment, a reflection of my guilt," I snapped, drawing on the remnants of my conviction. "You can't control me." But I already do, he shot back, his voice a cruel whisper that slithered through the air. Every choice you make, every word you type, they belong to me now. In that moment, the storm outside intensified, the rain pounding against the windows like a torrential assault. The sound merged with the pulse of my heartbeat, and suddenly, the typewriter's keys typed on their own. Words I hadn't written yet filled the air, swirling around us, distorting reality further. It's time to finish your story, Nathaniel. I lunged forward, the instinct to survive overriding the narrative logic that had ensnared me. The red mirror faltered, taken aback by my sudden aggression. I could feel the ink pooling at my fingertips, each drop a promise of what could be if I could just reclaim my creation. With a sense of renewed purpose, I charged toward him, ready to confront the embodiment of my darkest thoughts. The world around us trembled, and I could hear the whispers of the deleted scenes growing louder, clawing for attention. "It's time for you to disappear," I shouted, my voice rising above the storm's roar. But just as I reached for him, the walls began to collapse, the story unraveling around us like a frayed thread. The red mirror smiled wider, knowing that I was losing control of my own narrative. What if he was right? What if I couldn't reclaim the ending? "You can't escape who you are, Nathaniel. You're the one who created me." His laughter echoed through the corridor, a chilling reminder of the power I had relinquished. As the darkness enveloped us, I could feel the realization settling in. This was just the beginning. I had to find a way to retake the pen, to rewrite not just the killer, but the very fabric of my story. The rain beat down harder, a relentless reminder of the chaos I had unleashed. I took a deep breath, contemplating the path ahead. I could feel the typewriter calling to me, each key a heartbeat in a world that was slowly slipping through my fingers. "I'll finish this," I whispered to myself as I prepared for the next chaotic chapter. The storm roared in agreement, and I stepped deeper into the world. Chapter 2, Shadows of Creation. The storm outside mirrored the tempest inside me, every drop of rain a reminder of my spiraling control. I was a marionette dangling at the whim of the red mirror, each heartbeat echoing through the typewriter in my mind. I had roared defiance, but the truth was slinking in the shadows, waiting to pounce. I pressed forward, my feet pounding against the warped ground, a surreal blend of concrete and memory. The walls trembled with each step, distorting as if they were alive, tightening around me like a noose. My heart raced. I was not just running from the killer. I was running from my own guilt, the demons I had birthed through every keystroke. "Finish your story," whispered the darkness, a refrain that wrapped around my sanity like a vice. I could almost hear the typewriter keys clicking in nervous anticipation, teasing me with the prospect of control. But beneath the surface, doubt festered. What if he was right? What if I had crafted this monster as a reflection of myself? The ink coursing through my veins pulsed with urgency, but my mind was a chaotic whirlpool of doubts. I stumbled into the remnants of my narrative, the echoes of deleted scenes haunting me. Faces flashed by, characters I had abandoned, lives I had snuffed out with a mere stroke of a pen. My breath hitched as I confronted a specter of one such character, Sarah, the innocent victim whose fate had been sealed by my decisions. "Why did you let me die?" she whispered, her voice a ghostly echo, each word dripping with accusation. My guilt surged like a tidal wave. I had crafted her demise, painted her in blood and despair, and now she was here, a specter of my conscience. I choked, words failing me as the weight of her gaze bore down. But I couldn't linger. The red mirror was still out there, lurking in the shadows of my imagination. I had to confront him. "You're not real," I managed, voice shaking as the walls of my story quivered around me. I pushed forward, fueled by a surge of defiance, weaving through the fragmented memories of my creation. Each step was a battle against my own narrative, the lines between author and character blurring further. The shadows danced, shifting with my movement, and the typewriter's ghostly rhythm drummed in my ears. I could almost feel the cold touch of the keys beneath my fingers, complicit in the chaos. Suddenly, a flicker in the darkness caught my eye, a glint of red. My pulse quickened. The red mirror. He was here and he was smiling, a predatory grin that sliced through the storm raging outside. "You think you can escape?" he taunted, his voice a smooth, honeyed poison. "Every step you take is guided by my hand." "Fuck you," I spat, the words tasting bitter on my tongue. I was done playing victim to my own creation. I tightened my jaw, steeling myself against the tide of despair. I am the author here. But the ink was drying, a chilling thought that gripped me. What if my own words were becoming my prison? I took a step back, eyes darting around for an escape, but the environment morphed. The walls twisted and the shadows lengthened, coiling around me like serpents ready to strike. You can't run from your own reflection, he hissed, each word dripping with malice. The air thickened, the weight of his presence pressing down like a physical force.
I needed a plan. If I was to reclaim my narrative, I had to confront this twisted reflection of myself. I steadied my breathing, allowing the pulse of the typewriter to guide me. Each heartbeat was a reminder that I was still alive, still capable of writing my fate. Suddenly, the ground beneath us shook. The scenery cracked and peeled away, revealing a void that threatened to swallow us both. I could hear the whispers again, clamoring for attention, desperate to be part of the story. "You're losing control." The Red Mirror's laughter echoed, a chilling symphony that vibrated through the collapsing world. No, I won't let him win. I lunged forward, adrenaline igniting my senses as I charged at him.
The ink pooled beneath my fingertips, a rush of power surging through me as I reached for the typewriter that existed in my mind. "I'll finish this," I shouted, the words ripping from my throat like a battle cry. But just as I reached him, the ground split open, the chasm of my uncertainty threatening to drag me down. The Red Mirror's form flickered, a distortion of my own fears and regrets mocking my efforts. "You can't escape who you are, Nathaniel." His voice was a taunt, a bitter reminder of the truth I had tried to bury beneath layers of fiction. I felt my resolve wavering, the shadows closing in, suffocating me with regret. What if I was destined to write my own end? Yet, amidst the chaos, a clarity emerged. I realized that the typewriter was more than just a tool. It was my lifeline. "You're not the only one who can manipulate the story," I said, voice low and steady, a quiet defiance building within me. I could rewrite this, twist the narrative in my favor. With renewed determination, I focused on the typewriter's rhythm, each keystroke a heartbeat echoing through the storm. I envisioned the ending, a last sentence that would bind the Red Mirror to the pages of my imagination forever. As I reached for him again, the storm roared louder, the rain crashing against the walls of my mind. I would not be erased. I would not fade into obscurity. I was the author, and this was my story. With one final push, I lunged for the Red Mirror, ready to reclaim my fate. But before I could grasp him, the darkness surged, and everything fell apart. The world blurred, and I was falling, trapped within the confines of my own creation, the echoes of my chaos spiraling into oblivion. As I plummeted, a chilling realization gripped me. The end was no longer in my hands. What have I done? The storm raged on, and I could hear the typewriter's final clicks fading into silence. With that, I landed hard on the cold ground, darkness swallowing my scream. Chapter 3: Reflections of Fear. The ground, a roiling mass of shadows and regret, enveloped me as I struggled to rise. The storm's intensity ramped up, echoing my inner turmoil. Rain lashed against my skin, each drop like a lash of reality reminding me of the stakes at play. I glanced around, disoriented as the world twisted and trembled like a fever dream. Where the hell was I? This can't be happening. I'm losing control. I fought against the disorientation, my heart pounding in rhythm with the chaotic rain. The Red Mirror's laughter still lingered, a haunting reminder of the twisted narrative I was embroiled in. I had to find him. I had to confront this monstrous reflection of my failures. He knows my thoughts, my fears, but he underestimates me. I took a deep breath, letting the rain wash over me, fueling a flicker of resolve. "Show yourself, you coward!" My voice rang out, strong against the torrential downpour. The shadows parted, revealing a grotesque scene. There he stood, the Red Mirror, his features a warped version of my own. A cruel smile danced across his lips, his eyes glinting with malice. Ah, Nathaniel, the author finally finds his courage. How quaint. With each step I took, the ground shifted underfoot, the ink of my own making bubbling up like dark, viscous blood. I could see the reflections of my past mistakes floating within. Failed plots, abandoned characters, and the guilt that clawed at my insides. What have I unleashed? You think you can rewrite the ending? His voice slithered into my mind. "You're just prolonging the inevitable." I felt the weight of his words, a heavy shadow pressing down on my chest. Why did I create him? The truth was a dagger, and I felt it twist painfully within me. I had given him life, and now he sought to take mine. "You're wrong," I shot back, forcing defiance into my tone. "This is my story. You're nothing but a fragment of my imagination." As I spoke, I could feel the typewriter in my mind, its keys begging me to return to them, to craft a narrative that would bind the Red Mirror forever. "Imagination?" he scoffed, his laughter echoing like a sinister melody. "You're nothing without me. I am your muse and your curse." I stood firm, a surge of determination coursing through me. The storm roared, matching the chaos inside my mind. The rain fell harder, filling the air with a damp, heavy scent. I could not afford to back down. I was on the brink of a revelation. What if I could turn this against him? "I will rewrite you," I declared, my voice steady, carrying a weight of conviction. "You're a reflection, a shadow that I will obliterate." The ground trembled as I took a step forward. The Red Mirror's expression shifted to one of rage. "You think you can control me? I can tear apart your reality, Nathaniel." Suddenly, lightning struck, illuminating the scene for a brief moment, and I saw the world around us shift again. "This realm bends to the narrative," I remembered. "Only I hold the pen." With the storm as my ally, I imagined the typewriter, the ink flowing freely, words spilling forth like blood in a dark ritual. Each syllable I crafted would become a weapon. The thought ignited a fire within me. "You want chaos? Let's give them chaos." My voice was now a low growl, powerful and commanding. I stepped forward, the ink merging with the earth beneath my feet as I reached for the essence of my creation. Then, without warning, the ground beneath us cracked wide open, unveiling a chasm swirling with darkness. Not again! I could hear the whispers rising from the abyss, echoing my insecurities, my failures, the echoes of my chaotic mind. "You're losing control," I shouted against the noise, battling against the rising tide of despair. "But I am not finished. Not yet." The Red Mirror laughed, his twisted form flickering like a candle in the wind. "What will you do? Shout at the darkness? You've already lost." But I wouldn't let his words seep into my resolve. I closed my eyes, envisioning the typewriter, its keys clacking in sync with my heartbeat. "I will finish this," I shouted, my voice reaching an apex of clarity. Each keystroke resonated through the storm, the rhythm of my determination drowning out his laughter. Suddenly, with a burst of energy, I seized control of the narrative. The world around me shifted, rain transformed into sharp blades of ink that swirled and danced, reflecting my fury and desperation. The storm was no longer a symbol of despair, it became my weapon. "Let's see who survives this," I challenged. My voice a steady whisper as I prepared to type out my salvation. As I reached for the typewriter that existed solely in my mind, I could feel the power within me swelling. The Red Mirror's form flickered again, uncertainty etched on his face. "What are you doing?" I summoned the image of our final confrontation, the words forming in my mind like a vivid dream. The killer raised the knife. Before I could complete the thought, the Red Mirror lunged at me, a flash of red streaking through the storm-saturated air. I dodged just in time, the dark tendrils of his form grazing my arm. I can't let him touch me. "The story is mine," I roared, feeling the adrenaline pulse through my veins. I could sense the conclusion unfolding, the final act of this twisted tale, and I had to seize it before it slipped away. With every ounce of will, I typed the words that would bind him to me, that would seal his fate within the pages of my imagination. The storm surged around us, a ferocious backdrop to our impending clash.
I will not fade into obscurity. I am the author, and this is my story. I lunged forward, the ink swirling around us, confining him. The rain intensified, the world began to blur again, but I refused to let go. I struggled against the torrent, pushing through the chaos, determined to reclaim my narrative. But the darkness surged, attempting to drag me down into its depths. I could feel the edges of my control fraying, the words slipping through my fingers like sand.
What if I was destined to write my own end? The storm raged on as I felt myself falling once more, trapped in the confines of my creation. The echoes of chaos reverberated through me, a haunting reminder that the end was no longer just my decision. As I plummeted into the void, a chilling realization gripped me. The Red Mirror was right. I was losing control. With that, the storm screamed around me, and I felt the world fade to black. Breathe. Just breathe. The thought echoed in my mind as I landed hard, the cold ground beneath me a sharp reminder that I was still alive. But the darkness was closing in fast, and I could hear the whispers again, growing louder, more insistent. What have I done? The rain continued to fall, relentless, as I braced myself for the next chapter. My fight against the red mirror was far from over. In the depths of the storm, I could sense the final confrontation brewing, a battle not just for my life, but for my very soul. And I wasn't ready to let go just yet. I could hear the typewriter's keys softly clicking in the distance, a heartbeat waiting for me to return. Chapter 4, the final draft. Heavy rain drummed against the ground, a relentless percussion that matched the frantic rhythm of my heart. I blinked, struggling to gather my thoughts, to make sense of the swirling chaos around me. The world I had crafted, my dark creation, had begun to unravel. I pushed myself to my feet, the damp earth clinging to my skin as I steadied my breath. The storm was more than an atmospheric phenomenon. It was a reflection of my internal struggle. In this world, the elements were alive. They shaped themselves around my emotions. I could feel the weight of my despair, the ink of my fears bleeding into the narrative. I can't lose control. Not now. I took a deep breath, trying to shake off the creeping dread that had settled into my bones. I had to find a way to confront the red mirror before he extinguished the last flickers of my narrative. Every moment I hesitated felt like a betrayal of my own creation. The edges of my reality blurred as I ventured deeper into the storm. I was standing at the crossroads of my mind, a place where choices had consequences, where every path twisted into a new reality. A distant echo of thunder rolled, reminding me that time was running out. What if he was already rewriting my existence? I could not afford to dwell on that fear. Instead, I focused on the typewriter, that infernal machine that held the power to shape worlds. It was time to reclaim my story, to wield the ink as both shield and sword. With each step, I could almost hear the soft clicking of keys in the distance, beckoning me like a heartbeat. It was the sound of creation, the lifeblood of my thoughts pouring onto the page. But it was also an ominous reminder of the stakes, a reminder of the red mirror, lurking like a predator in the shadows of my imagination. As I moved cautiously forward, I recalled the red mirror's twisted grin, the way he relished in my struggle. He believes he can erase me. The thought sent a shudder down my spine, but it also ignited something fierce within me. I was not just a character in this story, I was the architect. If I could just reach that typewriter, I could write him out of existence. The rain began to soften, transforming into a mist that enveloped me, creating an otherworldly atmosphere. My senses heightened as I approached a clearing, a glimmer of hope in the midst of despair. The air crackled with electricity, anticipation hanging heavy like a storm cloud ready to burst. I could see the silhouette of the typewriter amid the haze, its keys glinting like polished bones, waiting for my touch. Suddenly, a flash of red caught my eye, the unmistakable outline of the red mirror. He emerged from the shadows, his features sharp and menacing, a being forged from the darkest corners of my mind. "You think you can defeat me?" he sneered, his voice echoing through the clearing. "You are nothing without me." I felt a surge of rage, a fierce defiance flaring inside me. "I am the author," I replied, my voice steady, defiance lacing every word. "You are merely a figment of my imagination." As I spoke, I reached for the typewriter, my lifeline, my salvation. The moment my fingers brushed against the cool keys, a jolt of energy surged through me. The red mirror lunged, his movements fluid and predatory. "You have no idea what I'm capable of," he hissed, his face contorting with fury. I pressed down on the keys, words spilling forth as if they had been waiting patiently for my command. This was my moment. "The killer raised the knife," I typed, the words taking form in the air around us, glowing with an ethereal light. Each keystroke felt like a heartbeat, pounding in time with the storm that swirled outside this strange reality. The red mirror's form flickered, uncertainty washing over him as the narrative began to shift. I pressed on, desperate to harness the momentum, but it was only the writer's reflection. The words hung in the air like a spell, distorting the space between us, pushing against the boundaries of his existence. He snarled, the anger in his eyes becoming palpable. You think you can trap me in your pathetic prose? I could see it now, his desperation, the cracks in his facade. He was afraid of losing, and that fear only fueled my resolve. I am the one in control here. The storm erupted around us, thunder booming as if to punctuate my defiance. The typewriter roared to life beneath my fingers, the sound blending with the chaos of the storm. I am the master of this story, I shouted, my voice rising above the cacophony. With every keystroke, I bent reality to my will, determined to trap the red mirror within the confines of my narrative. I typed faster, the ink spilling out like blood, each line a dagger aimed at the heart of my creation. But as the ink swirled, I felt a tremor beneath me, a shuddering reminder that the world was collapsing. The mist thickened, swirling closer, swallowing the edges of my existence. I could feel the darkness tugging at my consciousness, the grip of despair tightening like a noose. What if I was destined to write my own end? The red mirror let out a chilling laugh, echoing around me like the crack of a whip. You can't escape me, Nathaniel. I am your darkness. His taunting voice surged through me, igniting every doubt I had buried. Was he right? Was he an essential part of my narrative, woven into the fabric of my creation? Just when I thought I might drown in my own fears, the typewriter suddenly erupted with a blinding light, illuminating the clearing. The words I had conjured began to swirl around me, forming a cocoon of protection. The red mirror's form faltered, the fear evident in his eyes as he realized he was being drawn into the very narrative he sought to destroy. "No!" he screamed, twisting and writhing as the ink wrapped around him like chains. "You can't do this!" "Watch me," I whispered, my heart racing as I pressed the final key. A surge of energy pulsed through the air, a final declaration of my authority as an author. The storm calmed, the rain softly pattering onto the earth, a whisper of tranquility amidst the chaos. The red mirror's screams faded, swallowed by the silence that followed. I had done it. I had rewritten the narrative, binding him to the pages of my imagination. But as I stood there, the weight of triumph swept over me like a warm embrace. I felt a chill creep up my spine. The world around me began to flicker, a reminder that I wasn't free yet. The typewriter trembled beneath my hands, the ink still wet and glistening, a reminder that the story was far from over. I had won this battle, but at what cost? The ghostly echoes of unfinished words lingered in the air, and I could sense the looming threat of my own creation. A flicker of movement caught my eye. Was that a shadow in the corner of my vision? I turned, heart pounding, and saw the faint outline of the red mirror, his smile twisted and cruel. "You think you've won? You're still trapped, Nathaniel." And just like that, the rain began to fall again, heavier than before, drowning my victory under its weight. I needed to figure out how to escape before the storm consumed me whole. With a racing heart, I searched for the next chapter, knowing the fight against the red mirror was far from finished. As I prepared to type again Chapter 5, The Fractured Reflection. Rain hammered down on the typewriter, each drop a pulse against the wooden surface, drowning my thoughts. The storm outside echoed my internal chaos, blending reality and fiction into a singular, tumultuous existence. I glanced up, half expecting to see the red mirror lurking in the shadows, but there was only the flickering light overhead, casting distorted reflections on the walls. I need to keep writing, I reminded myself, desperation creeping into my mind like the rising tide of the storm. This was my sanctuary, my battleground, a stark reminder of my own fragility. The typewriter sat there, waiting, an altar of creation stained by the blood of my imagination. I took a deep breath, my fingers hovering over the keys. "The killer raised the knife," I murmured, feeling the weight of the words settle in my chest. I could feel the ink beginning to pulse, eager to escape, eager to tell the story. But it was only the writer's reflection. The words tumbled out, each one carrying the burden of my fears and doubts. The moment I pressed the keys, the air shifted. The typewriter emitted a low, ominous hum, vibrating with an energy I could barely comprehend. A shiver ran down my spine. I was not alone. I could sense the pressure of a looming presence, thick and suffocating, like the oncoming storm. "Still writing your little fairy tale, Nathaniel?" The red mirror's voice slithered through the shadows, each word a dagger aimed at my resolve. "You think you can trap me with your pathetic prose?" I clenched my jaw, refusing to show my fear. "This isn't just a story mirror, it's my fight." Your fight? He laughed, the sound echoing like thunder, reverberating through the air. You're writing your own demise. I'm merely a reflection of your darkest thoughts, the part of you that craves chaos. As he spoke, the storm intensified, the rain battering the roof like 1,000 fists, each drop a reminder that I was losing control. I could feel my resolve slipping, the boundaries between us blurring. With every word I typed, I felt the ink seep into my veins, the lines between creator and creation beginning to dissolve. What if he was right? What if I had become my own worst enemy? The uncertainty gnawed at me, threatening to unravel the very fabric of my being. I slammed my fingers against the keys, desperate to regain my grip on the narrative. The red mirror stepped closer, his eyes burning with malice, the blade glimmering in the dim light. I needed to summon the strength to confront the darkness within myself. The typewriter responded with a frantic clatter, the keys dancing beneath my fingers as if possessed. The ink splattered across the page, transforming into shadows that flickered and writhed, desperate to escape. You think you can just write me away? He sneered, stepping into the light, his figure a grotesque paragon of despair. I am you, Nathaniel. You can't escape me. I could see his twisted smile, a cruel mockery of victory, and suddenly I was back in my own head, drowning under the weight of self-doubt. What if I needed him? What if he was the key to unlocking my own fears? You need me to complete your story, he continued, his voice dripping with venom. Without me, you're just a hollow shell, a writer lost in a sea of expectations. I shook my head, forcing myself to breathe through the tension. You're wrong. I'm not lost. I'm fighting for my narrative. The rain pounded harder, and I could feel the world around me twisting, warping, as if responding to our confrontation. I had to stand firm. I could not let him dictate my reality. Then let's see how far your fight can take you, shall we? He lunged forward, a blur of motion that sent ripples through the air. My heart raced, adrenaline flooding my system as I realized that the time for writing was over. With a swift motion, I yanked the typewriter away, the crashing sound echoing like a war drum as it hit the floor. I stood, facing my creation, feeling the electricity in the air pulse between us. I won't be your pawn any longer, I shouted, the weight of my determination igniting a fire within me. His laughter rang out, chilling and echoing through the shadows. Foolish author, you think you have the power? Let's see if your bravado holds up to the truth. And with that, the ink surrounding us began to swirl violently, rising like a tempest, forming chaotic shapes that threatened to engulf me. I ducked, narrowly avoiding a stream of ink that shot past me, splattering against the wall. The residue glimmered ominously, as if it held secrets waiting to be revealed. What are you trying to prove? I yelled back, my voice steady despite the fear coursing through me. That you are your own worst enemy, he howled, his form shifting and contorting, becoming a grotesque amalgamation of my deepest fears and regrets. The storm outside raged on, each crack of thunder resonating with the violence of our confrontation. I could barely keep my footing as the ink swirled around me, pushing me closer to the edge of despair. I needed a plan, something to counter his influence. I grasped for the typewriter, my hands trembling slightly. I had to rewrite the very rules of the game to reclaim my narrative. The ink bled into the ground, I began, voice steadying, transforming into chains that bound the red mirror to his own darkness. The air thickened, crackling with energy as I typed, forcing the words to take hold. Every stroke was a declaration, a defiance against the chaos threatening to consume me. You can't bind me, he screamed, his voice filled with rage. I am the reflection you can never escape. But as I pressed on, I could feel the tide turning. The ink coiled around him, tightening like a vice, and for the first time I saw fear flicker in his eyes. You're just a figment of my imagination, I declared, voice rising above the storm. You have no power here. With a final keystroke, the world around me erupted into a blinding light, the ink shimmering in the chaos as it absorbed the red mirror into itself. The storm began to calm, the rain softening to a gentle pitter-patter, each drop a reminder of the battle fought. I stood amidst the remnants of our confrontation, breathless and trembling, but victorious. Yet, as I took a moment to catch my breath, I couldn't shake the feeling that the fight was far from over. The shadows still lurked at the edges of my vision, whispering secrets I had yet to uncover. I glanced at the typewriter, the keys still glistening with ink, waiting for my next move. This fight was just the beginning. I had to unravel the truth behind the red mirror and discover the depths of my own creation. With renewed resolve, I prepared to type again, feeling the pulse of the story quicken beneath my fingertips. The storm had faded, but the echoes of my darkest fears remained, lurking just beyond the page. And I knew that the next chapter would be the most crucial yet. In this world, I was both the creator and the created, and I would not rest until I had confronted every tear. Chapter 6, Shadows and Revelations. The echoes of my victory felt hollow, a mere flicker in the grand design of the narrative. Outside, the storm had shifted from a violent tempest to a gentle drizzle, the sky now a muted gray, mirroring my own turbulent thoughts. I stood amid the remnants of our confrontation, the typewriter before me a monument to the battle fought, but also a reminder of the lurking shadows waiting to pounce. What next? I whispered to myself, my gaze flickering toward the window. The rain drizzled down like tears, smudging the world outside into a watercolor haze. The red mirror was not defeated. He was merely biding his time, waiting for the moment I would let my guard down. I couldn't shake the feeling that I had only skimmed the surface of his darkness. I approached the typewriter, fingers hovering above the keys, feeling the pulse of the untold story beneath my fingertips. The ink still glistened, a dark reminder that I could shape reality with each stroke. But I needed to be careful. The last twist of the narrative had revealed how fragile my control was, how easily I could become ensnared in my own creation. "There's more to this," I murmured, typing with a fervor that threatened to consume me. "The red mirror is a reflection of my deepest fears, but what does that mean for my reality?" I forced the words to take shape, feeling the weight of my own despair. Suddenly, the ground trembled beneath me, the typewriter vibrating as if responding to the narrative I was weaving. The walls around me shimmered, bending and warping as the very fabric of my world began to shift. I jumped back, the typewriter sliding precariously toward the abyss that yawned beneath me. "Not again!" I shouted, panic rising as I scrambled to catch it. The moment my fingers grazed the keys, I felt a jolt of energy surge through me, pulling me into the depths of my own imagination. I was no longer in my study, but in an unfamiliar alley, the walls lined with dark, drenching shadows that seemed to whisper secrets I barely understood. The air was thick with tension, a palpable force that coiled around me, tightening like a noose. In the distance, I could hear the faint sound of footsteps, someone or something approaching. "Face your fears, Nathaniel," a voice echoed, deep and resonant. It was a voice that curled around my spine and gripped my heart with icy fingers. The red mirror had found me again, taking control of the narrative. I stepped into the shadows, the rain mixing with the ink-stained ground, each drop a pulse of my own heartbeat. I needed to confront him before he consumed me entirely. "You think you can just rewrite the rules?" I shouted into the darkness. "You're as trapped as I am." "Trapped?" he mocked, his laughter echoing off the walls. "I'm the one holding the pen, Nathaniel. You're merely a puppet dancing to a narrative you can't control." I stood my ground, adrenaline surging as I felt the story shift around us. If he believed he could manipulate me, he was wrong. I had already written the beginning. Now I had to craft an end that suited my design. The pounding of footsteps grew louder, the shadows coalescing into a figure that reflected my own fears. The red mirror emerged, his visage a grotesque parody of myself, eyes glinting with malevolence. "You've always been your own worst critic," he sneered, stepping closer, his presence suffocating. "And you're nothing but a figment of my imagination," I countered, my voice steadying even as my heart raced. "I can erase you just as easily as I created you." He paused, a flicker of doubt crossing his face. "Erasure? You think that's the answer? I am the truth you can't escape, Nathaniel." The shadows around him flickered, revealing glimpses of the chaos outside, scenes from the very story I had been trying to craft. Bodies and blood, each one a reminder of the lives entwined with my narrative, each death a consequence of my inability to face the truth. No, I'm done running from you," I declared, reaching for the typewriter that had materialized beside me, my lifeline to a reality I could shape. I began to type furiously, each keystroke a strike against the darkness that threatened to consume me. The ink spilled from the typewriter, forming a barrier between us, a shield against the very darkness that sought to engulf me. The words felt powerful as they filled the air with a shimmering light, illuminating the shadows that danced around us. "You think you can bind me with mere words?" he roared, claws extending as he lunged forward. But I pressed on, my determination igniting the very ink I was spilling onto the page. "You are nothing but a reflection, an echo of my fears, and I will shatter that reflection." The ink swirled, coalescing into chains that began to bind him, tightening like a vice. I could see the panic in his eyes, and for the first time, I felt the tables turn. With each keystroke, I felt the weight of my creation leaning back toward me, the power shifting as I reclaimed my narrative. But just as victory appeared within my grasp, the world around us began to fracture. The shadows writhed, the ground trembling as reality itself threatened to collapse. "You cannot escape the truth," he screamed, fighting against the chains as they bit into his flesh. "And you cannot erase me," I yelled back, the storm of our confrontation building again, crackling with energy as the air thickened with tension. With a final keystroke, I created a blinding light that erupted from the typewriter, enveloping us both. The ink shimmered, absorbing the red mirror into itself, until the brightness dulled, leaving an eerie calm in its wake. I stood alone, breathless, the rain now a gentle whisper against the ground. The battle had subsided, but I knew deep down that this reprieve was only temporary. The shadows still lurked, and somewhere in the recesses of my mind, the red mirror was plotting his return. The typewriter remained, its keys yearning for the next stroke, the next revelation. I took a deep breath, the remnants of fear still echoing around me. I was both the creator and the created, trapped in a cycle of my own making. The next chapter awaited, a blank page that held the promise and dread of what would come next. As the rain continued to fall, I knew I had to face the truth behind my reflections. Only then would I be able to confront the darkest corners of my imagination, and perhaps find a way to free myself from the story that had me in its grasp. With a determined heart, I prepared to type again, feeling the pulse of the narrative quicken beneath my fingertips. The ink was still wet, the chapters unwritten, and the shadows whispered secrets that begged to be uncovered. This was far from over, Chapter 7. The air was thick with tension, the kind that clung to your skin like sweat in a sweltering room. I could almost hear the clock ticking down the seconds, each tick an echo of the choices I had yet to make. The typewriter sat before me, a beacon of possibility and dread, its keys waiting anxiously for my touch. I felt the shadows creep closer, whispering threats laced with promises. Reality had begun to bend again, a mirror reflecting my every fear. With each heartbeat, the storm outside mirrored my turmoil, flashes of lightning, illuminating glimpses of memories I wished to forget. I closed my eyes for just a moment, trying to center myself, to remember who I was before I fell into this twisted narrative. "Focus, Nathaniel," I murmured to myself, the sound barely escaping my lips. "You're the author." But even as I spoke, doubt gnawed at me, clawing at the edges of my confidence. The weight of the red mirror's menace loomed over me, a specter of my own making, and he would stop at nothing to rewrite his fate. With a deep breath, I placed my fingers on the keys. The ink flowed as I began to type, each letter a catharsis, each word a weapon. The night was drenched in crimson, the rain falling like the last sigh of a dying world. The words spilled forth, and as they did, I could feel the atmosphere shift, the shadows writhing in response. "You think you can seal me away with pretty prose?" The red mirror's voice slithered through the air, slick and venomous. He emerged from the darkness, a twisted reflection of my own humanity. "Your words are shackles, Nathaniel, and they bind you just as tightly as they bind me." His mocking laughter sent a chill down my spine, a reminder of the stakes at hand. I couldn't let him win, not now, not ever. "This isn't just a story," I shot back, the conviction in my voice steadying my trembling limbs. "It's the end of your chapter." I hammered down on the keys, summoning the ink to flow with more ferocity. The words transformed into a swirling tempest, shadowed chains reaching out to ensnare him, tightening with every sentence I crafted. The air crackled with energy, the storm gathering strength beyond my control. The red mirror struggled, his claws scraping the ground, but the chains held firm. "You think you can contain me?" he screamed, rage boiling over, his features darkening like the clouds above us. The weight of his fury crashed like thunder, reverberating through the very fabric of this reality. "You are a figment of my imagination," I shouted, my own voice shaking with the force of my defiance. "You are my fear made flesh, a reflection I can shatter." The chains tightened, digging into his skin, the ink turning a deeper shade of red as I felt the power shift. With every stroke of the keys, I could see the world around us begin to shift, reality bending to my will. But with triumph came a swift, chilling realization. I was not the only one wielding power here. The ground shuddered beneath us, cracks appearing like gaping mouths ready to swallow us whole. "No!" The red mirror howled, thrashing against the chains that bound him. "You won't take this from me. I will write my own ending." The shadows around us surged, and for a moment I was struck with a blinding fear. What if he could rewrite the script? What if I was trapped in a trap of my own making? I could see him now, wild-eyed and desperate, embodying all my darkest thoughts. He was me, the twisted, hungry version that demanded to be free. "This ends now," I typed furiously, feeling the ink vibrate with my conviction. The typewriter screeched as the words poured out, forming a blinding light that erupted from the page. In a final act of defiance, Nathaniel confronted his reflection, staring into the depths of his own darkness. The light enveloped us both, and for a split second, time froze. I could see every moment, every choice that led me here. The realization struck like lightning. I was not just the creator, I was the creation. As the brilliance dimmed, I stood alone, the chains gone, the typewriter silent. Darkness surrounded me, but the storm outside softened, the rain now a gentle patter against the ground. The weight had lifted, but I felt it only momentarily. The red mirror had not vanished, he had merely retreated, licking his wounds, waiting for another chance to strike. Narrator, tense and urgent. "You think it's over?" A voice rasped, echoing in the confines of my mind. The chill of his words brushed against my consciousness, curling like smoke. I could sense him, lurking in the recesses of my thoughts, plotting his next move. "You are the master of your fate, Nathaniel," I whispered to myself, my own voice a steadying balm. "But you also bear the weight of your creation." I glanced back at the typewriter, its keys silent yet demanding. Their patience was unnerving. With a deep breath, I leaned forward, ready to confront my fears head-on. I was ensnared in my own narrative, but I could still twist it to my will. In that moment of clarity, I understood the truth. The next line I typed could either seal my fate or set me free. And so, I began to create again, fingers poised over the keys, ready to rewrite the story. I could still hear the echo of the red mirror's laughter in the distance, but muscling through the dread, I resolved to face him again. This time, I would not falter. With the rain falling softly outside, I typed my next words, feeling the pulse of the narrative quicken beneath my fingertips. The ink was still wet, the chapters unwritten, and the shadows whispered secrets begging to be uncovered. The storm, this eternal storm, was far from over, but I was no longer afraid. I was ready to confront the darkness I had summoned. The typewriter awaited my command, and I would not disappoint it. This is where the story truly begins. Chapter 8. The typewriter felt foreign beneath my fingers, a relic in a world that had become as fluid as ink. I had wrestled with my own creation, but here I was again, suspended in uncertainty, the shadows of my thoughts lingering like a thick fog. The red mirror's laughter echoed in my mind, taunting me, a reminder that I was not yet free. I could sense the sinister undercurrents of the narrative I had crafted, a labyrinth of fears waiting to ensnare me once more. The storm persisted outside, a relentless downpour that matched my tumultuous feelings. Each raindrop sounded like a heartbeat against the window, a reminder of the ticking clock that governed my fate. I drew a deep breath, the scent of rain mingling with the musty smell of the typewriter's ink, and began to write again. Every story must confront its antagonist, I typed, the keys clacking as I pushed back against the rising tide of dread. But what if the antagonist is merely a reflection of the author's darkest fears? My words seemed to summon a palpable tension, the air thickening around me as the shadows danced. I pictured the red mirror lurking just beyond the edges of my imagination, always watching, always waiting. He thrived on my insecurities, feeding off the chaos I had unleashed. He is me, I whispered, the admission cutting deeper than any blade. The realization was both liberating and terrifying. What did it mean to have created something that could consume me? The ink splattered, droplets transforming into miniature storms on the page. I closed my eyes, allowing my thoughts to spiral inward. What if I could rewrite him, give him a fate that could no longer bind me? What if I could turn the mirror back on him? A surge of determination ignited within me. I could no longer be the passive observer of my own story. It was time to take control, to sculpt the narrative with intention. With renewed vigor, I typed. The red mirror stepped forward, and Nathaniel Cross decided he would no longer be the hunted. The typewriter hummed, vibrating with the energy of my resolve. I could feel the fabric of the world around me shift, the shadows pulling back as if they understood the gravity of my words. Outside, the rain began to lighten, a steady patter that felt almost like applause. I took that as a sign, a reassurance that I was acting in accordance with the universe I had created. Each keystroke felt like a heartbeat, drawing me deeper into this metafictional duel. With each typewritten word, Nathaniel became more aware of his power, the ink flowing through his veins like blood. My own heart raced as I forged ahead, carving out a path through the darkness. I remembered each moment of fear, every flicker of doubt, and transformed them into my armor. But as I pressed on, uncertainty loomed. What if my resolve faltered? What if the red mirror found a way to drain my will? I could feel the weight of his gaze, a sharp chill creeping through the room. I steeled myself, forcing the doubt away. I am the author of this narrative, I reminded myself, and I will shape it. In that moment of clarity, the typewriter became an extension of my will. The red mirror advanced, his sinister smile reflecting the darkness within Nathaniel. I paused, letting the words sink in, the tension building as I felt the storm gather strength once more. I pictured the red mirror standing on the precipice of my mind, a grotesque caricature of my anxiety. Was he truly so powerful, or was he merely a figment of my imagination? With a sudden surge of inspiration, I imagined Nathaniel confronting his mirror image head-on. Nathaniel, unafraid, stepped toward the reflection. "You do not control my story!" he shouted, his voice echoing in the void. The typewriter exploded with noise, the keys slamming down in a fury, creating a cacophony of rebellion. The words erupted onto the page, spilling out like a rush of adrenaline. The atmosphere shifted, the shadows receding as I painted a picture of defiance. No longer would I be a puppet in my own tale. I could feel the world responding to my determination, the storm outside shaking with fury as if reflecting my resolve. The rain intensified, the patter now a rhythmic drum, urging me forward. "I write my fate," I cried, fingers flying over the keys, determined to craft a destiny free from the clutches of the red mirror. I could sense the walls of the narrative closing in, the gravity of my words bending reality itself. As the ink flowed, I was no longer just a writer, I was the architect of my own liberation. But even as I fought back, I felt the presence of the red mirror rising behind me, a specter of doubt, taunting me with whispers of failure. "You think you can escape?" he hissed, his voice sliding into my thoughts like poison. I could sense him drawing closer, the dark specter lurking, preying on my fears and insecurities. "This is my story. You will not steal it from me," I shouted, defiance spilling from my lips, a desperate plea turned battle cry. But as I typed those very words, I felt the world tremble beneath me, the lines between reality and fiction blurring as the storm raged outside. The power of creation surged through me, but so did the weight of responsibility. Each word bore the potential to shape not just my fate, but the very essence of the red mirror, my creation, now my nemesis. I knew that if I faltered, the darkness would consume me. I was locked in a dance of creation and destruction, the ink on the page a lifeline tethering me to my own sanity. Time stretched as I typed, the typewriter keys clashing in a battle hymn. The rain resonated with my heartbeat, quickened by fear and fury, a reminder that I was still alive, still fighting. Nathaniel took a deep breath, ready to wield the power of his own narrative. "In every reflection there lies a choice," he declared, confronting the darkness with unwavering strength. The words spilled from me like a torrent, each line a declaration of independence. I could feel the resistance building, the shadows slinking back into the corners of my mind, afraid of the light I was shedding. This was my moment of clarity. This was the turning point. The typewriter buzzed with energy, the ink shimmering on the page. I was no longer just a writer, I was a warrior, wielding a weapon of my own creation. With every keystroke, I rewove the story, pushing back against the chaos, reclaiming my power. This confrontation was not just a battle of words. It was a reckoning, the culmination of everything I had created. But in the stillness that followed, I could feel the tremors of uncertainty stirring again. Could I hold my ground? I looked at the typewriter, and I saw my reflection staring back at me. And for a fleeting moment, I feared that perhaps the red mirror had already won. But then, vitality surged through me once again. I was Nathaniel Cross, the author, the creator, and this was my story to tell. I would end it on my own terms. And with that, Nathaniel took the final step into the light, ready to face the truth of his own reflection. The words hung in the air, a promise of resolution, a hint of hope amidst the tumult. But lurking in that hope was the knowledge that the red mirror would never truly vanish. He would remain, a ghost in my narrative, forever watching and waiting. As I stared at the typewriter, the storm outside softened, creating a haunting lull in the chaos. I was poised on Chapter 9, the reflection of resolve. The typewriter sat heavy and silent in the charged air, ink glistening in the harsh light of my desk lamp. The storm outside rumbled, thrumming like an anxious heartbeat against the window, a constant reminder of the peril lurking so close. My fingers hovered above the keys, trembling slightly as I fought against the fear that threatened to consume me. "This is your last chance," I reminded myself, a mantra against the encroaching dread. The rain, a relentless drumming on the roof, matched my racing thoughts. The world I had created was collapsing around me, and I could feel the red mirror's presence lurking in the shadows, waiting for the moment I would falter. "He knows you," I whispered, "every weakness, every doubt." It was a battle of wits, and I had to outsmart my own creation before he could rewrite the narrative with my demise as the climax. Deep breath. I could feel the ink pooling in my chest, thick and heavy like blood. I had to harness that weight, channel it into something powerful, something that would push back against the red mirror's dark intentions. "You cannot erase me," I said aloud, the sound of my own voice grounding me. "This is my story." As I began to type, the keys clattered under my fingers, resonating with urgency. The words formed a shield, a barrier against the darkness creeping closer. Nathaniel stood firm, a beacon against the shadows. "I will not be the pawn in your game," he declared, his resolve unyielding. Each line I typed was a step into the light, a confrontation with the very essence of my fears. But as the narrative flowed, a chill crept down my spine. I could feel the shadows shifting, twisting, as if they were alive, hungry for my failure. The red mirror was watching, and I could sense him slipping through the gaps in my prose, waiting to snatch away my agency. My heart pounded a frantic rhythm in my chest, echoing the urgency in my words. The storm outside surged, driving harder against the windows. The rain was no longer just weather. It was a reflection of my inner turmoil, a manifestation of my struggle. My typewriter was my weapon, and with every keystroke, I pushed back against the encroaching chaos. In this moment, Nathaniel was no longer the writer, but the architect of his fate. I could feel the narrative shifting, like a tide turning. With every word, I fought to reshape the reality I had unwittingly crafted. "I will expose you, Red Mirror. You are nothing but a reflection of my darkest fears." But deep down, I felt the icy tendrils of doubt wrapping around my resolve. What if he was right? What if I truly was powerless against my own creation? The shadows whispered, taunting me with thoughts of failure. "You cannot escape your own mind, Nathaniel," they hissed, their voices like soft rustling leaves, permeating the air with dread. I clenched my jaw, refusing to let them take root. "I am not afraid of you," I screamed, my voice rising above the chaos, drowning out the whispers. Suddenly, the sounds of footsteps echoed through the dim room, heavy, deliberate. Panic surged through me, and I turned, half expecting to see the red mirror standing behind me, knife gleaming in the dim light. But there was only the empty space, the typewriter, and my feeble heartbeat ringing in my ears. The typewriter became my sanctuary. Each keystroke fueled my determination. Nathaniel would not falter before the shadows. He would rise, stronger than the darkness encroaching upon him. As I typed, I could feel the tension in the air shift. The energy of creation surged through me, a buoyant force against the weight of dread. But just as clarity began to settle, the world outside erupted into chaos. The wind howled, rattling the windows as if in furious protest. I could feel the storm's energy surging, filling the room with electric tension. What if this is the moment? I thought, a creeping realization that the red mirror was preparing to strike, to rewrite the rules of the game. I pressed on, determined to finish the line, to reclaim my story. And in that moment, Nathaniel faced his reflection, realizing that within every shadow lies the truth he must confront. The words poured from me, spilling out like a flood. I was close, so close, but the air was charged with foreboding. The howling wind rattled the walls, pushing back against my resolve. I could almost hear the red mirror's laughter echoing in the storm, mocking my efforts. You think you can claim victory? You're just prolonging the inevitable. His cadence twisted through my thoughts, a serpent coiling tighter, squeezing the strength from my heart. I am the author! I shouted defiantly into the void, each keystroke a hammer against the chains binding me. Your existence is a fracture in my story, a plot device I will dismantle. But even as I typed, I felt it. A shift, a loss of control. The words began to morph, reshaping themselves into images I had not intended. The typewriter clattered louder, almost protesting the direction I was taking. I paused, a bead of sweat tracing down my spine. The storm roared outside, as if the universe itself was trying to drown my voice. What if I'm losing it? The thought bled into my mind, a creeping vine entwining my resolve. Then suddenly the typewriter stopped. The keys jammed, stuck as if the very mechanism had revolted against my intent. Panic surged. The storm outside crescendoed, rattling the very fibers of my being. I could feel the red mirror's presence tightening around me like a noose, suffocating and cold. In that moment, I realized I was not merely fighting the red mirror. I was battling my own demons, the very essence of what I had created. You are nothing but a figment of my imagination, I screamed, my voice rising above the storm. With renewed vigor, I pounded on the keys, determined to untwist the fate that had slipped from my grasp. In the end, Nathaniel would not be defeated. He would rise, reclaim the narrative, and face the truth that lay within. And as I typed those words, the storm outside began to ebb, the rain softening to a whisper. I could feel the world shifting, the storm receding as if it sensed the change in my resolve. The shadows that once seemed to close in began to fade, retreating back into the corners where they belonged. But even as the tension lifted, I knew this was not over. The red mirror would not be so easily vanquished. He lingered, a specter, waiting for the right moment to strike again. This was my story, but my creation was still alive, still watching. And as I sat before the typewriter, I realized that our battle was far from finished. Just as I finished that thought, the room darkened again, shadows flickering across the walls like smoke. Come back, Nathaniel, a voice echoed, smooth and seductive. You can't escape me. And with that, I knew I had to confront my reflection. Not just the red mirror, but the part of me that feared the truth. It was time to face what I had wrought, to confront the darkness and claw my way back to light. Let this be the moment I reclaim my fate, I whispered, poised to type the next line, ready to face whatever horror lay ahead. As the rain continued to fall, I steeled myself for the next confrontation, my fingers hovering over the keys, chapter 10. The confrontation, I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of my potential next words pressing down like a lead blanket. The typewriter felt alien under my fingers, as if it knew the battle we were locked in. Face your fears, I reminded myself, my voice barely above a whisper. This is your creation. You have the power. But even as I spoke these words, an unsettling chill swept through the room, wrapping around my spine like icy fingers. I glanced toward the mirror's reflection. My own face stared back, but the shadows danced behind me, twisted and ominous. What if I am the monster? The thought slithered into my mind, taunting me. I knew that the red mirror was close. Each heartbeat thudded in my ears, a drum roll heralding the inevitable. A shiver coursed through me as I positioned my fingers over the keys, the tension palpable. I will rewrite this, I declared to the dimly lit room, channeling every ounce of my resolve. But doubt gnawed at the edges of my thoughts. What if he's right? With the storm still raging outside, lightning illuminating the chaos beyond my window, I felt the first flicker of resolve. I was not merely a victim of my own story, I was its architect. Each keystroke could carve a new reality. I began to type again, urgency propelling my fingers. Nathaniel stood tall, heart pounding, ready to confront the red mirror at the precipice of truth. As the words formed, the air crackled with electric tension. I could envision the scene so vividly, the swirling shadows coalescing into a figure that was all too familiar, a dark reflection of my own turmoil. "You think you can write me out?" The voice slithered from the darkness, smooth and taunting, with an undertone of menace. "You are trapped within the pages, Nathaniel. I am your greatest creation, just as you are mine." I fought the urge to recoil, my fingers freezing mid-type. The red mirror stepped forward, the dim light revealing his ghastly features, my own face twisted into a grotesque mask. "You cannot escape the truth of your creation. It is woven into your soul." The thunder crashed, echoing my inner turmoil. What truth? That I was a coward, an author too afraid to confront his own demons? I shouted, the words spilling out in a rush of desperation. Each accusation cut deeper, each revelation a dagger aimed at my heart. "You think writing can save you? You think I am the monster?" His laughter echoed, a dark melody that pierced the storm raging outside. "No, Nathaniel, you are the architect of your own demise." I ground my teeth, unwilling to let his venom seep into my veins. "I will not let you win. I will expose you for what you are." I focused, tapping back into the well of rage that fueled my creativity. My determination surged. This was my moment. The red mirror lunged forward, knife gleaming in the shadows, but Nathaniel was ready. The words poured from me, bold and defiant. I could feel the fabric of the story shift, the world bending to my will. "You think your pen can save you?" The red mirror sneered, closing the distance between us. "You are your own worst enemy." He raised the knife, the glint of metal a stark contrast against the darkness. Time slowed, the heartbeat of the typewriter echoing in perfect rhythm with my racing pulse. I had to write my escape. "No," I screamed, my voice slicing through the tension like a blade. "You're nothing but an illusion, a reflection of my insecurities." The thunder roared in response, and the rain hammered against the window, an angry symphony. I could feel the storm mirroring my chaotic thoughts, but I harnessed that energy, channeling it into my words. But Nathaniel would not cower. He would face the truth. The typewriter clacked in furious protest, each keystroke a declaration of war against the darkness. He grasped the pen like a sword, ready to fight for his own narrative. The red mirror hesitated, a flicker of uncertainty crossing his twisted features. Perhaps he hadn't anticipated this shift in power, the realization that he was merely a manifestation of my fears. With newfound courage, Nathaniel swung the pen, transforming the blade into ink. Each stroke symbolized my defiance, a rejection of the narrative he tried to impose. It felt as if I were rewriting the very laws of this world, reshaping reality with each decisive line. "You cannot erase me," I shouted, feeling the tides of control shifting in my favor. "I am the author. I will write you into oblivion." His expression darkened, rage boiling beneath the surface. "You think yourself clever, but this is only the beginning." And just as I felt the tide of victory turning, just as I thought I could banish him, I felt a sudden jolt, as if the very fabric of reality was tearing apart. The shadows writhed and twisted, threatening to engulf me. Time blurred, I was back in the void, the typewriter fading from view. Panic surged through me. "No! This isn't how it ends!" But then I remembered it was time to confront the darkness, to face the truth of my existence. I gritted my teeth and willed myself back, reaching out for the typewriter. I will not be erased. I could feel the presence of the red mirror looming, and I forced myself to type one final line, a flicker of light piercing through the darkness. The killer raised the knife, but it was only the writer's reflection. The words echoed in the void, a proclamation of triumph. The storm raged outside, but within me a storm was settling, a fierce calm that unfolded like wings. As I stared at the typewriter, the shadows began to recede, but I could still feel the red mirror lurking at the edges. This battle was far from over. "Let him come," I whispered, steeling myself for whatever lay ahead. I am ready to face my creation. And with that final thought, I prepared for the next chapter of this twisted tale, feeling the power of the narrative surge through me once more, compelling me forward into the unknown. The storm had not finished raging, and neither had my story. Pulling forward into the next moment, I welcomed the challenge that awaited, ready to write my fate. As I sat before the typewriter, fingers hovering above the keys, a sense of unease crept into my bones. The storm outside had morphed into a howling beast, its winds clawing at the windows like desperate fingers seeking entry. My heart raced, each beat a reminder that the red mirror was still out there, lurking in the shadows of my creation. What now? I whispered to myself, trying to anchor my spiraling thoughts. The words felt heavy, laden with the weight of my insecurities. The storm's fury was a reflection of my own turmoil. I had fought back against my darkest fears, but the battle was far from over. I stared at the typewriter, its keys glistening like polished stones, waiting for me to summon the courage to write. "I have to finish this," I muttered, my voice barely audible over the cacophony outside. I pressed a key, the sound echoing in the stillness of my mind. The killer raised the knife, but it was only the writer's reflection. My heart pounded with each word that formed on the page, the ink spilling like blood, a testament to my struggle. But could I really defeat him? "I am the author," I declared, each keystroke a pulse of defiance. But as the ink flowed, a chilling realization swept over me. The words I wrote were not just ink on paper, they were life and death. The Red Mirror was more than a character, he was me, personified. My own demons clawed their way to the surface with every letter I typed. If I am to destroy him, I must confront what he represents. I could almost hear him taunting me, his voice a low rumble in the back of my mind. "You can't escape what you've created, Nathaniel." The shadows stirred, twisting into grotesque figures, each one a fragment of my fears and failures. The room felt smaller, the walls closing in as if the very space around me was suffocating. With a surge of determination, I pushed back against the encroaching darkness. I will not be a prisoner of my own story. I pounded the keys, pouring every ounce of my fear and anger into the typewriter. The words sprang to life, the narrative taking shape, and I felt the familiar pulse of power surge through me. Nathaniel would stand tall, defiant against the tide. But as I wrote, the shadows writhed and whispered, beckoning me toward despair. "No, I cannot let him win!" I roared, the sound echoing against the storm. My voice was raw, but it came from a place deeper than fear. It came from a fierce need to reclaim my story. The Red Mirror's laughter echoed in my ears. "What makes you think you can change the ending? You are trapped in this narrative, just like me." I could feel his presence, a dark cloud hovering just beyond the edges of my perception, waiting for a moment of weakness to strike. I paused, the typewriter stilled, and with it, so did my breath. What am I really afraid of? I asked myself, digging deeper into my psyche. Was I terrified of the Red Mirror, or was he merely the embodiment of my own self-doubt? The rain intensified, each droplet a reminder of the memories I'd tried to drown. This isn't just fiction, it's my life. The realization hit me like a slap to the face. I was writing not only to defeat a monster, but to confront the man I had become, the choices I had made, and the path I had chosen. I took a breath, steadying my pulse. If I am to face him, I must accept the truth of who I am, I resolved, steeling myself for the battle ahead. The typewriter beckoned, the keys gleaming with possibility. With each keystroke, I would reclaim my narrative and rewrite my fate. The storm outside raged, but within, a storm began to settle, a calm that felt almost surreal. "I will not back down," I whispered fiercely, my fingers dancing over the keys once more. "I am the architect of this tale." Just then, the lights flickered, and for a moment the shadows deepened, twisting and contorting as if alive. "You think you can find solace in your words?" The Red Mirror's voice slithered through the air, wrapping around my throat like a noose. "You will only summon your own ruin." "No," my voice rang out, resonant with newfound strength. "I will summon my strength." I began to type furiously, the words spilling forth, each one a battle cry against the encroaching darkness. Nathaniel would not falter. He would rise, armed with the truth. The typewriter clacked and clattered, the rhythm matching the heartbeat of my resolve. The shadows twitched, recoiling from the light I was beginning to cast. I could feel the Red Mirror's anger vibrating in the air as I confronted him through the lens of my words. Suddenly, the storm outside reached a crescendo, the roar of thunder drowning out everything else. It was as if the universe itself was responding to my struggle, the chaos matching the tumult within my mind. I leaned forward, every keystroke a declaration of war, every word a step closer to liberation. "This ends now," I shouted, my fingers flying over the keys. "I am the author, and this story will be mine to tell." The realization that I could reshape the narrative fueled my determination, igniting a fire in my belly. With each word, I reclaimed my power, and then in that moment I could feel it. The shift. The very fabric of the world trembled in response to my will. The storm broke, the winds howling in agony, the rain pounding in furious rhythm, but I stood firm. "You will not erase me, Red Mirror." With that final thought, I charged into the fray, ready to confront the darkness that lay in wait, prepared to face the remnants of my creation with a heart full of defiance. The typewriter sang beneath my fingers, and I welcomed the challenge with open arms. As I typed the last line, I felt a crack in the air, a potential shift in reality. The words flowed like a river, unstoppable and true. With every keystroke, I breathed life into Nathaniel, and with it, I will defeat the Red Mirror. The storm outside began to settle, no longer a chaotic beast, but a cleansing rain that washed away remnants of the past. I was ready to put an end to this twisted tale, to confront not only the Red Mirror, but also the truth of who I was. Let the narrative unfold. The end was near, and I could feel it, the resolution creeping closer with every passing moment. But in the back of my mind, a whisper lingered. What if the ending isn't what you expect? The question echoed through the storm, a haunting reminder that even in triumph, shadows lurked at the edges of my consciousness. And just as I prepared for the final confrontation, I wrote the last word of the chapter, the ink still wet on the page. The battle lay ahead, a duel that would rewrite everything I thought I knew. "I am ready," I whispered, but as I looked toward the shadows, I felt a shiver crawl up my spine. The Red Mirror was still watching, and I could no longer deny it. This story would demand everything of me. Pulling forward into the next moment, I would either be reborn or consumed by my own narrative. Chapter 12, The Final Confrontation. The typewriter hummed beneath my fingers, a living entity fueled by my desperate resolve. I could feel the storm outside raging, but here, in this warped dimension of my own making, I wielded its chaos. The gusts howled and the rain lashed against the window like a fury unleashed, but all of it was nothing compared to the war brewing in my mind. With each keystroke, I summoned the courage I needed, the determination to reclaim my story from the Red Mirror. The air thickened with tension, every moment heavy with stakes that had never felt so real. What if this was it, the final stand against my creation, against the monster who had clawed its way out of my imagination and into my life? "Show yourself, you coward," I shouted, the words exploding from my mouth, crackling like lightning in the storm. The shadows frayed at the edges of my vision, coiling and twisting as if they were sentient. The thunder roared in response, a wild applause to my bravado. I was not just writing a story, I was scripting my existence. Suddenly, the typewriter spit out a single line, unbidden and raw. The killer raised the knife, but it was only the writer's reflection. A chill scuttled down my spine. Was that the end? A whisper of doubt crept in, but I shut it down with fervor. No, not yet. This is my story. With renewed vigor, I typed. Each letter surged with the pulse of my heartbeat, the rhythm matching the storm outside. The rain pounded down, a backdrop to my inner turmoil. Was I the creator, or was I just a pawn in a game that had spiraled beyond my control? The ink flowed like blood, pooling on the page as I forged deeper into the narrative. I could feel the energy shifting. The air crackled with possibility. I had to confront the Red Mirror, not just as a writer, but as Nathaniel, the man who had given life to a nightmare. "Face me," I roared, and in that moment the darkness flickered. The Red Mirror stepped from the shadows, a distorted reflection of my own self, eyes blazing with an insatiable hunger, a grin that carried the weight of 1,000 broken fables. "Ah, Nathaniel," he teased, his voice a sinister echo, "you think you can rewrite your fate? You are nothing without me." "Without you I can finally breathe," I shot back, fury igniting my words like flame. "You are a figment, a grotesque shadow of my own making, but I am the one who holds the pen." He laughed, a chilling sound that reverberated through the storm. You've given me life, author. Every stroke of your genius has carved a path for me. You think you can erase me? I am your truth. I am your reflection. The world around us trembled, the walls closing in as his words clawed at the very fabric of my existence. I felt the ground shift beneath me, a reminder that reality was a fragile construct. I will not be your prisoner, I declared, fingers flying over the keys, desperate to finish the battle on my terms. The typewriter clacked in furious response, an orchestra that played in harmony with my determination. The air thickened with the scent of ink, a heady mix of creation and destruction. Each word I typed became a shield against his darkness. I could see flashes of his own failed stories, moments where he had tried to ensnare me in a web of despair. But I was more than that. I was the author, and I would not succumb to my own narrative. Let's finish this, I shouted, the walls around us vibrating with my energy. You will not take me down. You will not erase what I've built. The red mirror lunged, and my heart raced, blood roaring in my ears. I fought against the rising tide of panic, recalling every chapter I had ever written, the characters who had come to life because of my voice. They were counting on me. I know the truth, I screamed, not just at him but at myself. I am more than the sum of my fears. I am the architect of my fate. With that realization, the typewriter erupted in sound, keys hammering like thunder, words spilling forth in a torrent of defiance. I typed faster, conjuring images of defeat for the red mirror, a twisted version of his own demise. Each keystroke resonated with the power of every story I'd ever penned. Let the ink flow, I urged, feeling the pulse of creativity course through me. The storm outside began to shift, the winds losing their chaotic energy as if responding to my newfound control. I could see the red mirror faltering, his confidence eroding beneath the assault of my words. I could trap him in the very narrative he had tried to twist against me. Your time is up, I typed, each word an executioner's sentence. With the last stroke, I paused, breath heaving. The storm outside stilled, waiting for the conclusion. I glanced at the last line I had written, knowing it would dictate the outcome. A deep breath filled my lungs as I hit the final key, punctuating my declaration. The world around us shook violently, the shadows screaming in protest. I had written my truth, and as the words echoed into the air, I felt the ground beneath me quake. I was Nathaniel Cross, not just a writer, but a warrior wielding a pen like a sword. And as the ink dried, I realized the truth I had always known. I had the power to define my narrative, to bind the red mirror back into the pages from which he came. But as I felt the last remnants of his presence fade, a chilling whisper brushed against my consciousness. What if the ending isn't what you expect? A shiver crept up my spine, and I turned, half expecting to see him lurking in the shadows. But there was only the reflection of my own face staring back at me from the typewriter's gleaming surface. I had won, hadn't I? As I stared into my reflection, the faintest echo of a grin tugged at the corners of my mouth. The red mirror was gone, but lingering doubts clawed at my thoughts. As I leaned closer to the typewriter, I realized the storm outside began to echo once more, the winds rising in furious delight. I had rewritten my fate, but the narrative was not finished. This story would demand everything of me, and I was ready to give it. The curtain was set to fall, the end was near. But what awaited me beyond this final keystroke? Let the narrative unfold, I murmured, breathless as I prepared to confront the darkness one last time. The final confrontation awaited, and as the ink dried on the page, I felt the weight of every word pressing against my soul. The red mirror might have slipped away for now, but I could feel his presence, watching, waiting. What awaited me in the shadows? I would find out soon enough. Thank you for listening. Please subscribe, ring the bell, and tell your friends about my listening library.